What's up guys, it's Mike Thurston here. Today I'm going to take you through my top 5 shoulder exercises and shoulder exercises which you should be implementing into your routine. Now, the way I've structured this is I've picked one exercise which is going to focus on the front delt, 2 exercises which are going to focus on the mid delt, and another 2 exercises which are going to focus on the rear delt. When it comes to training shoulders, most people should have a pretty developed front delt, okay? And that's because of all the pressing movements which they'll do, particularly when it comes to training chest, whether it's decline, flat, incline, you'll have a pretty decently developed front delt. If you don't, you're probably doing something wrong. So that is why it's my belief, when training shoulders, most people should be paying more of their attention on the mid and rear delt, because that is where most people are weak and underdeveloped. So you can check, if you look in the mirror, look at your shoulder, you'll notice most people, they have this part of the shoulder will kind of be sticking out a little bit, it'll look quite dominant, and then it'll just be flat and smooth here because of the lack of development in the rear delt and mid delt. So, first exercise I would go for is a seated overhead shoulder press with dumbbells. So the number one thing you want to bear in mind when it comes to the seated shoulder press is what angle do you set the bench at, and this is often determined by your level of external rotation. So this is external rotation. People who are flexible, they can get the rotation all the way up to here. Some people, or most people, it tends to be about here. So we adjust the bench accordingly. So for most people, I would rarely ever have the bench completely upright. The problem is, if you try and keep that bench upright and your rotation, you can only get it to about here, you end up curving your spine, arching your back, and then pressing in this movement. And all that does is it just moves tension away to more of the upper pec instead of keeping it on the front delt, which is the area we're trying to work here. For people who do a press and then elevate at the top here, this elevation is moving the tension away from the front delt and you're placing it onto your traps, which is not what you want to do. Another thing as well you want to bear in mind, when pressing, don't bring your hands directly above your shoulders into this position, because there's no tension occurring. All the tension is just placed down your arms into your elbow joints. So ideally, this is the kind of thing you want to be going for. So this is my starting position, finishing about here. This is where I'm still keeping tension on my shoulder. I'm not locking out here and moving tension away. I'm keeping my shoulders depressed. Now the next exercise I'll move on to is this seated dumbbell lateral raise. Now when it comes to training the mid delt, we need to make sure that we can place tension on the area which we are trying to target, okay? You gotta think, it's such a small muscle, there's no need to be lifting any crazy weights. Most people who do this are over engaging their traps. I'm not gonna lie, I've made the same mistake in the past as well, just trying to lift too heavy and elevating here just to bring the heavy weights up. And the problem is, if you elevate and over engage in your traps, you reduce how much you can actually shorten the lateral head of the delt. So just keep it light, okay? Keep the weight light, and you're gonna keep your shoulders as depressed as possible. You can only do that with a lighter weight, because most people just aren't strong enough to bring the weight all the way back up to here, okay? So what I would do is just grab a light weight and play about with it. Just think to yourself, okay, let's place the tension on the area which we're trying to target. When I'm doing this, I can feel it massively on my mid delt. For most people, I would only stay within the range which they're comfortable with, okay? So only if you can only bring the weight up to here whilst maintaining tension on the shoulders, that's fine, okay? Start off with that and then build it up to being able to lift it a little bit higher. What I would bear in mind when doing this, you see at this point in the movement when I'm relaxed, you're not doing anything, there's no tension whatsoever. So as you bring the weights down, you should really stop here and then go back into the second repetition or third, whatever. okay? So you're keeping tension constant on the shoulders, especially the mid shoulder, which we're trying to target, throughout the entire set. Another way of keeping tension on the mid portion of the delt is to keep that dumbbell flat, okay? Most people, when they begin to fatigue, they rotate and bring the dumbbell up to about here. If I'm holding the dumbbell in this position, all the tension is back onto my front delt, which is not what I'm trying to target. Another exercise which I would then move on to would be a variation of the lateral raise, but this time using cables, okay? So with this one, you're overloading the bottom part of the strength curve. Now, when doing a normal dumbbell lateral raise, you'll be weakest here, okay? Where gravity is acting directly down 90 degrees to your arm. Okay, so most people, they spend very little time here, and at this point here, they're not really training the delts in the lengthened position. So that's why we use cables to overload and maximize the tension at the bottom portion of the movement. So you're really only working through this range, but you're working the bottom part of the strength curve, which is highly effective, particularly if you want to have an all-around strong delt and a big kind of 3D looking delt. You can do this variation either with a single arm, or you can do it with both arms at the same time. And I would probably vary it from using the close cable crossover and the wider cable crossover. Both are very good. Both are just going to place different forces at different points in the movement, okay? So it's okay to vary from time to time. The next exercise I'd move on to is the chest supported dumbbell rear delt fly. Hand positioning, whether you do a pronated or neutral grip, it's just going to recruit slightly different fibers, so I'll just mix it up from time to time. I'll start off with the pronated position. I'm going to depress my shoulders, this is the absolute key, push the shoulders down, and then pull the dumbbells up, okay? So I'm thinking about pushing my shoulders down, but trying to push my hands as far away from my body as possible. You just have to bear in mind, you have to keep your shoulders pushed forward at all times. And you'll probably find that maybe every 10 reps, just think, okay, do a little check. Just pause slightly, push down again, reset, and continue, because as you continue throughout, particularly a big set with lots of reps, your shoulders will want to creep backwards a little bit. And I think what's worth doing is maybe just filming yourself or getting someone else to film you so you can see your form, because it's not going to be easy to see what your shoulders are doing from behind with no mirror or anything like that. So record yourself and make sure that there isn't too much retraction occurring. Final exercise I'll move on to is the rear delt fly machine. Now most gyms should have this. When you're doing this, again, similar principles apply to doing the dumbbell rear delt fly. You're pushing your shoulders forward and just bringing your arms out whilst maintaining that fixed position within your shoulders. Okay, so if you wanted to, you could work the shortened position, or you can work again the lengthened position. So when you get into position when doing the rear delt fly machine, you want to make sure that the seat's at the right height. You don't want to be positioned so that you're in this kind of position because you're just going to be using way too much of your traps. Your hands should be the same level as your shoulder when your shoulders are depressed. So this is the kind of position you want to go for. Imagine the benches here. You're going to protract your shoulders, and as you initiate the movement, obviously we're trying to initiate the movement with the rear delt, we're not trying to pull back, you're trying to push your hands as far away as possible until you're in the fully shortened range, which is usually about here, okay? If you try and bring your hands back any further, you're just going to retract your shoulders, take tension away from the rear delt, and it's all in your back. Or you'll end up doing some form of internal rotation, which again is not what we're trying to achieve here. Now you will know if it's working if you start to feel a burn within this area. Okay, if you're doing 15 reps or more and you're not feeling a burn whatsoever, there's something not quite right. So just practice with this one. Obviously we're trying to get stronger, we're trying to build up the muscles, but for most people I would want you to start off with a lower weight and just practice with it first until you really get the feel for it before you can then start to really overload the muscle itself. You got to remember, it's only small. It only can take a little bit of weight. You don't try and, swing back and forwards with no control. It's not going to help grow your rear delts, which is the whole point of this exercise. So guys, there you go. They're my top 5 exercises. Obviously, there's a lot more you can kind of use to build up the shoulders. But from my experience, most people need to be focusing on the mid and rear delt as opposed to the front delt. That's just my personal opinion. When it comes to rep ranges, obviously if we're trying to go for size, you can use a wide range of rep ranges. For the seated overhead press, you can use anywhere from 6 to 12 to try and build some size. But when it comes to the lateral raises, and particularly the rear delt flies, you can go into a much higher rep range. I'm talking 10 reps or higher. You can be doing 25 plus reps, particularly with the rear delt flies, to really pound them, okay? So high reps and a higher number of sets. And I wouldn't personally go to the gym and focus on training just shoulders. I would probably look to try and hit them at least twice per week, particularly if it's a lagging body part, but I would combine it with another muscle group at the same time. Obviously, with a lot of back movements and rowing movements, you are going to get some degree of rear delt stimulation, but it's simply not going to be enough for most people to get enough size and growth put onto that area. So, hope you enjoyed this. Don't forget to subscribe and I'll see you soon.